All right, so there's a very easy solution to this, and of course, what that solution is just to bring this over here and take it up to the event here. It has to be the event tick, not begin play. So very simple fix there. So as you can see here, let's go ahead and let's run it and play it, and look at that. Okay, so the timer's working, and the balls are working too. I think that looks pretty good. So right now, if we go back in here, and this is all spread out for a bit, but essentially this is working the way we want it to without any kind of problems. But there's a huge issue. So first is we need to go and take a look at this duration here, and it's very simple. What do we want the duration to go down by? What we can do is we can add in a variable here, okay, and this will be, and it might make sense to say this is timer variable. Okay, so the duration here, and we'll say timer, not duration, but timer interval. Okay, so we have a timer interval here. And so, the last one was 0.2. What I might say is 0.9 or 0.9. 0.9 right there. So what that's going to do is that every 0.9 seconds this delay is going to happen, okay? And then we're going to subtract, we could also subtract something else from it, like we could subtract 0.1 from it, but I'm just going to actually subtract 1 for now. Now, even if we're not using decimals as a float, that doesn't mean you should always use an integer. One of the things you have to manage is your variable type and your data types when you're scaling up a project. So if you think that you are going to be using a float later on, then you might use it. However, in some circles, and depending on the company you work for, if you're ever making this for a company, that might be an error. If you're never using a decimal, then you always use an integer. So the difference is that different companies will have different standards. So the bigger company, usually the more strict the standard. And then when you're making games on your own, there's also your standards. And the question is do you want to spend more time figuring out whether you should use a float or an int or getting your game out the door? Well, when you're making a game by yourself, it's more or less getting the game out the door, which is more important. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to save this. And okay, so now that we have a timer here and everything is working, let's just go ahead and let's kind of play it and run it here. This is where you can use how many balls here. And this is why we test it, because look at the side there. So we need to hop back into the heads-up display. And one thing I'm thinking about doing here is if we hop up to the anchors at the top here, what we might do is let's also make this the left as well, and we're going to move this over. Okay, so just like that. In fact, we'll kind of put it in the middle here, and we might as well put that one in the middle as well. Okay, so now that we have that, let's save it. Okay, and let's run it. Okay, and let's try and do it. Test it again. Okay, good. So essentially we have the beginning of a game. You have 20 seconds, and then you see how many balls you can destroy in this little shooting gallery. It's not a bad little game, but it definitely gets the job done. Now, what we did there is we tested it, and it took 20 seconds. But you have to test it along the way. And if you've been watching this series, you'll notice that I test along the way at small intervals. And the reason I do that is because one time I didn't test over a weekend, and my code was so completely broken that I basically wasted my weekend coding a project, and you don't want to do that with your project either. So just keep that in mind when you are when you're making a game here. Now, at this point of time, we do have a lot of the numbers and in place, and now what a lot of people would do is they would play around. Would they make the ball spawn a little bit faster? Would the timer be a bit lower? Projectile, etc. So at this point in time, we have a pretty good idea of what the prototype is, and we just need to kind of tweak it from there.